My name is Marlis Leon. I am the Council Bluffs Public Library adult programming librarian. I remember many years ago a Super Bowl party that I was sharing with my in-laws down in a hotel room in Florida. We had pizza and snacks and pop, but what was the most fun? Not who won the game, but instead the shared experience of everything involved. Family, food, the game, oh, and of course, the ads. The Super Bowl is much more than a football game, and as you might know, it is the only sport event that impacts every community in the United States. Evan Werner, a veteran sports broadcaster, is joining us tonight to take us for a touchdown victory through history. Now, if you have any questions for him as he presents, please put them into the chat or the Q&A that you'll find on the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we will have Evan talk to you and answer those questions. Now, join me in welcoming Evan Werner.
Thank you, Marlis. Thank you for inviting me. And thank you. This is my first talk ever for Iowa. So it's kind of exciting for me because I know Iowans like Rich Lamb, who works at WCBS Radio in New York, who grew up in Iowa. I've never covered the Super Bowl, but I've been around football forever. As you could see in that picture, that is me when I once had hair. And Phil Simms, the New York Giants quarterback, who was actually an MVP of the 1987. The game was played in 87, but it was the 86 season Super Bowl. And I think he's more interested in eating his banana than talking to me, but that's the life of a reporter. I am a reporter. I've been doing this since 1971 when I was 15 years old. And one of the things around football when I was 26 years old, there was a NFL player strike in 1982. And I'll give you the quick story because I'll give you some insight how we do our job as reporters. We're in the New York Sheraton on 7th Avenue and 55th Street. And we're waiting around. So I decided to go to the men's room. And who's in the men's room next to me but Gene Upshaw, who the retired Oakland Raiders guard, who is the vice president of the National Football League Players Association. And he kind of like, it's over. Yeah. Can't make eye contact because you're in the, yeah. So, we walk out, we both wash our hands. I said, so it's over. Yeah, it's over. So I happened to be doing a live spot for WTIC in Hartford, Connecticut at that time. So I walked out and said, it's over. The football players are going back to work. And I told the story to Arnold Dean. He says, well, how'd you find that out? I said, well, sometimes you do your best work in the bathroom, which is what I did that time. Anyway, the Super Bowl. This year, it's not going to be the pageant that it's been, but you'll still be able to rate the commercials. Probably won't have much of a halftime show. There will be somebody singing the national anthem, and whether that lives up to Whitney Houston or not, well, we'll see how that happens. And by the way, I do have a question for you. If you remember the 1991 Super Bowl in Tampa, was Whitney Houston live or on tape when she sung the national anthem, if you remember that? That answer comes down the road a little bit. So Super Bowl, how did we get here? Why is Super Bowl America's holiday? In fact, the Super Bowl is an afterthought. The Super Bowl happened because of circumstances. And basically, ask your question. Okay. And the Super Bowl starts in New Orleans, of all places. Now, the Super Bowl took an act of Congress to create the Super Bowl. Super Bowl was created after the United States Congress passed legislation which allowed the merger of the American Football League, Lamar Hunt's league, and the National Football League, George Halas's league. The merger was tacked on to an anti-inflation bill, like some senator or anybody else is going to vote and say, hey, we're in favor of inflation, right? It was signed onto anti-inflation bill signed into law by Lyndon Johnson, November 8th, 1966. And let's talk a little bit about the security, because the Super Bowl is a high risk, high level event. It's a level 1 event in the country. And as such, it gets special scrutiny. Tier 1 level event, Super Bowl is a special events assessment rated level 1 event. There are 50 agencies that have been working for the past year and a half in Tampa, and actually in Florida for the past 2.5 years, because the Super Bowl was in Broward County last year, north of Miami. There's no word on how much it costs taxpayers to provide security for the Super Bowl. NFL doesn't put up any money. Among the agencies that watch over the Super Bowl, the FBI, FEMA, TSA, Customs and Border Patrol, local police in Florida, the Tampa Police, also probably the county sheriff's office, and certainly the Florida State Police, all part of the security team. But the Super Bowl really starts here in New Orleans in 1965. 1964-65 American Football League All Stars. The National Football League had just expanded into Atlanta, 15th team. The American Football League had 8 teams and was looking to expand into a 9th city. And if you see these guys on this picture, Butch Bird is on the right, Curtis McClintock, who is the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, is the guy with his hand on the counter, and others are all Faison. And they're sitting in New Orleans waiting for a cab to take them either to the Fontainebleau Hotel or the Hotel Roosevelt. The American Football League was looking to put a team in New Orleans, and Dave Dixon, who would go on to found the USFL in 1981, and that started in 1983, was one of the business leaders who said to Lamar Hunt, let's come, or you come to New Orleans, we want a team. And Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law back on July 7th, 1964. No more Jim Crow. These guys are going to be treated equally. Doesn't matter. Negro players, white players, they're both going to be treated equally in New Orleans. And we are going to greet them with open arms when we get there. Now let's do this quick background of how the Super Bowl actually starts. Civil Rights Act of 1964, Jim Crow, New Orleans, a players' boycott. Senator Russell Long, Representative Hale Boggs, Cokie Roberts' father, Representative Emanuel Seller of Brooklyn, New York, are all part of the Super Bowl creation by accident and by design. Ron Mix was a player with the San Diego Chargers between 1960 and 70. Actually, the Los Angeles Chargers, the team moved to San Diego in January of 1961, and he finished out his career with the Oakland Raiders. He is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is also a lawyer. He's about 83 years old and still active. And Ron and I, in 2014, I gave Ron a call. I said, hey, Ron, we haven't spoken in a long time, but I need your opinion here. And he said, okay. I said, compare the situation you were in New Orleans with Jim Crow and all, and the NBA Los Angeles Clippers, and the players getting very, very annoyed at the owner, Donald Sterling, for things he told his mistress about not having her hanging around black guys coming to games. Ultimately, Sterling is thrown out of the NBA. And I said, can you compare the two boycotts or possible boycott in the NBA? He said, no, and yes and no. He says, of the New Orleans game, we're aware that New Orleans was hosting the game to demonstrate to the American Football League and the National Football League that New Orleans, could support the football franchise. The last thing we wanted to do was assist them, New Orleans, in demonstrating they could support the franchise. A boycott wasn't the only alternative for the players. This wasn't the first time New Orleans had some problems with the American Football League. Back in 1961, Walter Beach was a player with the Boston Patriots. And Walter Beach probably started the first protest in all of sports, or at least in the 1960s. He was with the Boston Patriots, defensive back, And he said, when we go to New Orleans to play a preseason game down there, I want to be treated like everybody else. I don't want any of this green book stuff. I don't want to spend the time at a different hotel, eating at a different restaurant, having to take a separate bus than the rest of the players. I want to be treated as one. Walter Beach was fired by the Boston Patriots in the American Football League because he was a troublemaker, according to Billy Sullivan, the owner of the team, for organizing a protest among the black players against segregated living conditions during the team's road trip in New Orleans. He would end up with the Cleveland Browns, be part of their 1964 championship team, and he was also part of the Cleveland Summit in 1968 when Jim Brown organized athletes. They met in Cleveland to see if Muhammad Ali was legitimate or not in not joining the armed forces. They concluded Ali was legitimate and decided to help him. Cookie Gilchrist was a running back with the Buffalo Bills. And the stories are starting to come in about how the black players were left at the airport because they couldn't get cabs. But if you were a Negro, African-American, or black player, you could get a cab as long as a white guy took you. In his case, his teammate Jack Kemp, the executive director of the American Football League Players Association, the Buffalo Bills quarterback, his teammate, so he was able to get a cab with Kemp to go down to the hotel in New Orleans. But he starts hearing the stories. New Orleans leaders said in the city, come, we want you. Hey, segregation, Jim Crow, thing of the past. We desperately want a professional football team. AFL, come. The American Football League at that time was the only league to truly embrace African-American athletes as an equal on the field with white players. NFL had a quota of 4 black players per team at that time. NFL scouts went to watch players from big-time schools like University of Iowa, Iowa State, the Big Ten, and conferences. The AFL looked for players with a slightly different background. They went to the traditional black schools, Grambling in Louisiana, Bethune-Cookman in Florida, Prairie View, Morgan State University, players that were overlooked by the National Football League. But ironically, that Civil Rights Act in 1964 destroyed the black college football programs because the best players could now attend University of Alabama or Louisiana State or Florida State or the University of Texas in the South. Abner Haynes. Abner's a friend of mine. He's about 83, 84 years old. He lives in Dallas, Texas. He was the captain of the Dallas Texans in 1961. Team moves to Kansas City in 1963. He is a member of the American Football League All Star team. And Abner told me, he said, Lamar Hunt, the owner of the team, told me, David Grayson, and some others, the Negro players on the team, he said, name, rank, and serial number. That's it. Abner Haynes, running back Kansas City Chiefs, member of the American Football League All-Star team. That's all you had to say. Don't say anything else. Abner tells some stories. Gets to the Roosevelt Hotel after sitting at the airport for 3 hours, after Jack Kemp realizes the guys aren't coming from the airport, and they call to tell Jack Kemp, we're stuck here. There's some negotiations between the American Football League, the state of Louisiana, and New Orleans, and they get the cabs out to the hotel, rather to the airport, to get the players to the hotel. Abner finally gets to the Hotel Roosevelt. He checks in with David Grayson, his teammate. No problems checking in. And then he talks about the elevator ride. And the elevator was one of these old hand-cranked elevators. The door opened, you saw a gate. Somebody pulled the gate, and somebody with a steering wheel is going back and forth. And he says there's this elderly lady sitting there. He says they had a woman operating the elevator, and she looked at them. And she said, what are you monkeys doing here? He said, Abner Haynes, running back Kansas City Chiefs, member of the American Football League All-Star team. She says, you monkeys, come on in, get to the back. And there are other stories floating around. Ernie Ladd, 6'9", 315 pounds, went to school at Grambling in Louisiana. And he and his teammate Earl Faison and a few other guys decide they're going to hit Bourbon Street. And they're going to have a good time. They're there. They're not really there to play a football game. They're there to have fun. And Ernie Ladd walks in with Earl Faison. Now, Ernie's 6'9", Earl's about 6'5". And there's a bouncer at the door. He's a little guy, maybe 5'9", 5'10". And he says, I wouldn't go in here if I were you. And he said, I'm going in here. I'm here to have a good time. He said, no. I tell you, I wouldn't go in there if I were you. And Ernie's going in, and suddenly the guy takes out a gun. Ernie leaves, Earl leaves, and they get back to the hotel. Abner says, we have about 10 or 12 guys in my room, and we're talking sensibly. We're going to stay together. This was just another test. As players, we had no leverage. We weren't playing for money, but we were playing for progress. Football players took the lead. Yeah, in sports, football players took the lead, going back to Walter Beach in 1961. Places like Atlanta, New Orleans, Miami, death holes. Dave Grayson could get a drink at the bar. Our white teammates in New Orleans were there for us. Guy like him, Jack Kemp. That's 1979. Me and Jack Kemp, he was a congressman from Western New York at that time, Spark Hill, New York, and he was thinking about running for president back in 1980, and he was out on the campaign trail, and I'm doing my one-on-one interview with him. I was 23 years old when I was doing that interview. Anyway, all the players, the black players, the 22 black players decide, well, we're going to sit and we're going to talk. And they tell Kemp, we're talking by ourselves. And Jack says, okay, whatever you decide, we'll take care of it. President of the Players Association. Players decide to boycott New Orleans. No game. Now, Kemp is the one who has to deliver the news to the American Football League ownership. And he does to Bud Adams, who owned Houston at the time. And Bud quickly arranges for the AFL All Star Game to move to Houston. Now, these guys all put their necks on the line with this boycott. Kemp had political aspirations. He could have easily been shoved out by the American Football League. So could have all the other players who decided not to play. But the owner said, okay, you know what? We got your back on this one. And they did have their back on that one. That left New Orleans without a team. And there was Jack Kemp. Let me just say one thing about that picture. I showed Jack that picture years later. And he looked at me and he said, what happened to your hair? And I said, what happened to that wig? And there he is with my son in 2003. So you could see the wig went from that color to white. Anyway, Jack and I had a pretty good relationship over the years. Abner said one of the things we, the AFL, needed was the unity of the white and black players for our new league. When the white players, Jack Kemp, Jerry Mays, who was our Kansas City defensive leader, and 4 or 5 other guys, heard about what was happening, their characters showed and my teammates were looking after me. Okay, New Orleans loses a franchise. The AFL was supposed to, at halftime, announce we're coming to New Orleans for either 1965 or 1966. That's not happening. And New Orleans is out looking in with no chance at that time of getting back in. The boycott was on. Eventually, New Orleans would become a political pawn. The Super Bowl would rise out of the ashes of the New Orleans boycott. In Dallas at Love Field on June 8th, 1966, the Kansas City Chiefs owner, Lamar Hunt, meets with Texas E. Schramm. I don't know what his official title was with the Dallas Cowboys. He ran the Cowboys and told a lot of stories. Some of them were true, actually. But anyway, they announced a merger. And they have to go to Congress because they couldn't become one. The two couldn't become one and get married without the blessing from Congress. It would be a violation of the antitrust laws. There's me and Pete Rozelle. That's 1986 at the USFL NFL trial in Lower Manhattan, Southern District, Peter K. Leisure's courtroom. And Pete Rozelle is commissioner of the National Football League, and it is his job to get the merger done. And he's an old hand at this. He's in his seventh year as the NFL commissioner. And he had been down to Capitol Hill quite a few times, especially in 1961, because he had to lobby the House and Brooklyn Democrat Emanuel Seller in an attempt to get a limited antitrust exemption so the National Football League could sell all 14 of its franchises, including the expansion Minnesota Vikings, which I guess you get on TV now, as one entry so they could sell it to either CBS or NBC, because those were the only two networks that had money in those days and enough stations. ABC was half a network. The Sports Broadcast Act of 1961, signed into law by John Kennedy, that was September 30th of that year, and allowed the NFL to take the 14 franchises, bundle them as one, and then sell it to either CBS or NBC. That law would propel the NFL into a different economic orbit, and with CBS, they would begin to really sell the NFL, although they started in 1960 with the Violent World of Sam Huff. But they had a good team in New York. CBS wanted to push handsome Frank Gifford and those people. And people became interested in football thanks to the 1958 National Football League championship game. So football is being jolted here. Getting back to 1966, on the left is Russell Long. He's the fifth most powerful Democrat. Democrats were in control of the Senate in 1966, and Lyndon Johnson, and I don't think they were talking about football there. The Democrat, Russell Long, was the Senate Majority Whip and chairman of the Senate Financial Committee. He wasn't too interested in this merger, as Pete Rozelle found out, nor was the Congressman Hale Boggs. These are two very powerful people in the South. If you nailed Long, if you nailed Boggs, you were going to get other votes, whether it's Alabama, Eastern Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi. And Rozelle knew that. But these two guys said to Rozelle, hey, we don't have a team in New Orleans. Because we don't have a team in New Orleans, what does it do for us? It doesn't do anything for us. You know what, thanks, and I understand your plight. You want to have a team, but it doesn't do anything for us. Well, Pete Rozelle goes back to his owners and says, hey, we need to give them a team to get their votes. And if we give them a team, we will get their votes. So we better start thinking of that. Then there was another problem. The New York Jets. Joe Namath was the New York Jets, face of the New York Jets back in 1965, 1966, and becoming the face of the American Football League. New York Jets play in Queens, the next congressional district to Emanuel Seller. And there was some talk that, hey, this week might be able to get New Orleans a team doing this. We'll send the Jets and Namath. He's got box office appeal. We'll send him to Hollywood. He's doing commercials anyway. He might get to the movies. Daniel Reeves, well, he could take his franchise down to San Diego and replace the AFL Chargers. And Baron Hilton, who owns the AFL San Diego Chargers, well, he's got business interests in New Orleans, so we could get him there. The Oakland Raiders, well, the Raiders, well, we got to get them out of the San Francisco Bay Area. So we could send them to Seattle or Portland, one of those two cities. And that's it. 24 teams, 24 cities. That's the way it should be, except Emanuel Seller didn't see it that way. Rozelle and Seller worked together in 1961, the subcommittee on antitrust. Basically, Rozelle said, okay, you win. All the teams are going to stay. We'll expand to New Orleans. Seller gives a thumb up. Russell Long gives a thumb up. Hale Boggs gives a thumb up. And New Orleans, some old-time, old-fashioned political horse trading. This is from the Mardi Gras of 2 years ago when I was down there speaking on a cruise ship, talking about the Mardi Gras. And that was when they felt that they got screwed out of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So I thought that was a great picture for a football talk. New Orleans would get a team. Rozelle and the NFL owners relented. They worked out a deal with Hale Boggs. They put a team in New Orleans. Congress approved the NFL-AFL merger, giving the two competitors an antitrust exemption. which was added as a rider to an anti-inflation tax bill on October 21st, 1966. The NFL said, you do this, and within 10 days, you have a team. It took 11 because they did not want to announce a team for New Orleans on Halloween. Let's do it All Saints Day, November 1st. And the New Orleans Saints, born November 1st, 1966. There's Hale Boggs, who would go to Alaska and, a number of years later, not too long after this, and was in a plane crash, and his body was never recovered. The NFL, the 16 franchise, goes to New Orleans November 1st, 1966, All Saints Day. Johnson signs the bill into law November 8th, 1966 with that pen, and that is Public Law 89-800. It was called the Suspension of Credit Act, which carried a rider approving the merger of the National Football League and the American Football League. If you go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, you get to see that pen, which created the Super Bowl. It's all about money. I wrote a book called The Coal Miners Game. But the original title, until somebody talked me out of it, was Cash on the Barrelhead, because that's all the NFL cares about. The league, the NFL, they pocketed $8 million in expansion fee from the New Orleans owner, John Mecum, and that was split evenly between 15 owners, which means they got about $475,000 per team. Additionally, because the New York Jets ownership, Sonny Werblin, paid $10 million to the New York Giants ownership, the Mara family. The Oakland Raiders, because they invaded the San Francisco Bay Area, had to give the 49ers $8 million. The AFL would expand in 1968 to Cincinnati. The AFL would give the $7.5 million that they received in an expansion fee to the 16 owners, which means they got about another $475,000, nearly $1 million, and then the Giants owners got $11 million, and the San Francisco owners got about $9 million. Now here's a question. Did Vince Lombardi ever win the Super Bowl trophy called the Lombardi Trophy? Or did he ever win the Super Bowl? Yes or no? It's kind of a trick question. But Lombardi never did win a Super Bowl, nor did he win a Lombardi Trophy, and I'll explain why in a second. Now, let me ask you a question about Mickey Mouse. You know, when I was growing up, and I'm going to be 65 years old, and some of you might have heard the same thing, I heard that if something was called a Mickey Mouse thing, it's a rinky-dink thing. Just a rinky-dink thing. Wasn't very good. Now, about 15 years ago, Comcast tried a hostile takeover of Disney for $66 billion. And I always thought, why were things called Mickey Mouse a put down? Do you know how much that rodent is really worth? That rodent is worth billions of dollars. Green Bay and Kansas City played in the first American Football League, National Football League championship game. It wasn't called the Super Bowl. The Green Bay coach, Vince Lombardi, didn't want to play in the game. His team had won the National Football League championship, and he referred to the AFL as the Mickey Mouse League. It's the Mickey Mouse League. First Super Bowl, empty seats. There were about 30,000 empty seats in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum for the first game between Green Bay and Kansas City. Green Bay wins it 35-10. It was a box office flop. 94,000 seats, 33,000 empty seats. But the ticket prices, you can't say the ticket prices were outrageous. $12, $10, $6. This year in Tampa, you could spend $6 passing the stadium in gas. That's about as close as you're going to get with $6 to the Super Bowl. It was the last time that a Super Bowl or World Championship game was not a sellout. Vince Lombardi was playing for the pride of CBS. He was playing for Ed Sullivan. He was playing for Red Skelton. He was playing for Jed Clampett and the Beverly Hillbillies. He was playing for Gilligan. See, Bill Paley was the head of CBS, and the NFL was on CBS, and the American Football League was on NBC. And there had been bad blood between CBS, Bill Paley, and David Sarnoff ever since Jack Benny left the radio division in the late 1940s and took most of the comedians over to CBS, both radio and TV. The only one that was left was Fred Allen. So Paley wanted not only to beat the American Football League, but he wanted to beat Sarnoff in NBC. First game played January 15th, 1967. It's just 26 days after the final approval of the merger of the NFL and AFL. CBS and NBC televised the game using the same television feed with different announcers, different advertisers. CBS chairman Bill Paley, who founded the company in 1927, WCAU Radio in Philadelphia, leaned on Lombardi. He's coaching for CBS's pride. Now, as far as the tapes, 54 years later, neither CBS nor NBC's version of the game survived. Back in those days in TV, videos were very expensive, so the network bosses thought. Very few things were kept. Ed Sullivan kept his stuff. Jackie Gleason kept his stuff. They paid for it, and they stored it in the warehouse. That's why you don't see very many game shows from that era, or shows that might have been on that weren't preserved if they were on video. The NFL about 8-9 years ago put out an all points bulletin looking for the game tape. $10 million. Maybe somebody had it in the attic. Maybe it was sent to Vietnam, and because they used to send Armed Forces Network would send videos out. Maybe somebody stored it and snuck it home with them, but nobody did. So there is no complete copy of the games. $10 million still out there if you could produce one. The odds are they're not going to find it. They pieced together a game through NFL films and various pieces of video. What the networks did in those days, unless it was John Kennedy being assassinated, they just taped over things. And these tapes probably went to the next sporting event to tape them, and they've never surfaced. $10 million out there if you can find it. Now, Mickey Mouse 3. This is Jerry Kramer, Hall of Famer now, who is with the Green Bay Packers, and he's telling me, 1988. I was talking to Frank Gifford years ago, and he mentioned he announced that first Super Bowl. Gifford said he was fairly cool, calm, and relaxed. He went over to put his arm on Vince's shoulder, and Lombardi was shaking like a leaf. Gifford said, that really made me nervous. Gifford, of course, was the CBS announcer, playing for the pride of CBS. By the way, Vince Lombardi's favorite player of all time was Frank Gifford. He was the offensive coordinator with the New York Giants when Gifford was there. Money, money, money. NBC. I was going to say, I should put the peacock up there, but I didn't. CBS and NBC charged $42,000 for a 30-second commercial. This year, no, it's about $5.6 million for 30 seconds. In fact, just yesterday, it was announced that the NFL is for the next series of games, which would be this weekend and the weekend following, and those 2 weekends. They're allowing the networks to put in 2 more minutes of advertising so they could get more money televising the games. The 2 networks paid $9.5 million to televise the game. There were all kinds of disagreements. Which ball they use? Well, when Green Bay was on offense, they used the Wilson Duke football, named after the New York Giants owner, Wellington Merritt, the Duke of Wellington. When Kansas City had the ball, they used the AFL-sanctioned Spalding J5V. It was Ford. They owned the Detroit team, the Ford family, in the NFL against Chrysler. CBS against NBC. NFL establishment sports writers like Tex Mall of Sports Illustrated against the NBC AFL announcer Kirk Gowdy. It just wasn't a game. There was a lot of rivalry going on. That would all subside. Tex Schramm, Texas E. Schramm, again, Dallas Cowboys, he talked a lot, talked an awful lot. And I use this quote, but by 1965, football was the most popular spectator sport in the United States. Tex gets his years mixed up here by 2 years. The Super Bowl kind of put the icing on the cake, and the interest in the National Football League kept rolling until it was the most popular spectator sport in the United States. And that is the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, which is still around, home for USC now, and me at a very tender age of about 26 at that point. Now the Super Bowl name, it's a big deal, the Super Bowl name, because when you go to the supermarket, you'll see super sales, but you'll never see, hey, this is the Super Bowl. Buy all your food for the Super Bowl. You'll see it for the big game. The NFL tried to trademark the big game, and they were laughed out of court. But nobody calls it the Super Bowl when you go and buy your cases of beer for the party, or you go and get your pizza for the party. No, it's not Super Bowl, because the NFL will come down on you and they will fine you or try to fine you, or they will send a letter of cease and desist. Some people began calling the Super, actually it was one person, it was Al Davis, the Oakland Raiders. They played in the 1968 AFL NFL World Championship game. Some people, Al Davis, began calling the American Football League National Football League Championship game the Super Bowl in 1968. It wasn't officially the Super Bowl. No one could think of a proper name. The NFL commissioner, Pete Rozelle, said he thought that the Kansas City Chiefs owner and the founder of the AFL, Lamar Hunt's idea of calling it the Super Bowl was corny. I said to Pete back in the 1980s, he said, you really are, because we were doing this interview, you really are a product of your time. Corny. He said, that's all I said in the 1940s and 50s when I thought something was kind of stupid. It was corny. I don't hear anybody using that anymore. In a July 25th, 1966 letter to Rozelle, Lamar wrote, I have kiddingly called it the Super Bowl, which obviously can be improved upon. It was never improved upon. In fact, Hunt misspoke when he talked about the Super Bowl for the first time. It was one of the spur of the moment things. No one ever said it, what we're going to call it. It was just one of those things that came out of the mouth. It was not too inspired. Or was it? Might have been. Might have been. I'll report and you decide. Hunt was home one day watching his children play with a ball when he first uttered the words. They each had a super ball that my wife had given them, and they were always talking about them, including the present day owner of the team, Clark Hunt. And I just used the expression Super Bowl. It was an accidental thing. Well, if you go back to the 1960s and you remember this little ball, there it is, that ball, that was great, because you would throw it against the wall and it'd go here, it'd go there, it'd go, it wouldn't have a true bounce. It was called the Super Bowl. And his kids were playing with it. Same time I was playing with it. It was a great toy. Mine was blue. Remember, and then I lost it one day. My parents never replaced it. Part of my childhood that I won't talk about anymore. But anyway, the Super Bowl. Now, Whammo put out the Super Bowl. As far as the Whammo Super Bowl started in 1964, but its shelf life considerably less than the Super Bowl. It was a toy made of Zectron. A chemical engineer by the name of Norman Stingley found out when formed at 50,000 pounds of pressure, Zectron becomes uncontrollably bouncy. Whammo began producing a ball made of Zectron in 1964, and those commercials were great when I was a kid. They were great because I used to watch it, and I used to sit there and, oh, it's a double top secret. Didn't know what the formula was. It was a double top secret, but the competitors found it out real fast. After a few years, the double top secret formula for Zectron was copied by Whammo's competitors, and the Super Ball floundered out of production by 1976. That is me, my buddy Bruce Morton on the left, who was carrying the ABC stick, and Joe Namath. And this was at Wingfoot Golf Course in New York. And I was wearing a tie for some reason. It's the middle of summer and I'm wearing a tie. But anyway, no sport coat. Nobody else wearing a sport coat. Anyway, we were talking about the 1969 Super Bowl, 20th anniversary year. Jets win the Super Bowl. Now, there was a big loser here whose story is never told. His name is Lou Michaels. He was the kicker for the Baltimore Colts. He was also the younger brother of the New York Jets defensive coordinator, Walt Michaels. And Lou and Walt looked alike. They looked alike. So Lou remembers this day or this night in a Fort Lauderdale bar. Joe Namath comes in, and he comes in with Jim Hudson, his teammate with the Jets. And Jim Hudson and Joe Namath look, and they see Lou Michaels. They run out, and they come back in. And I'll let Lou tell the story. Well, Lou is dead, but I'll let his words tell the story. I must say, Joe was a very cocky individual. I never expected that from Joe when he walked into the place. He had a fur coat on. I'll never forget it, a fur coat in Miami. And he points over to me. Instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Joe Namath," I thought he was going to introduce himself and say hello. He points over to me and he says, "We're going to kick the out of you, and I'm going to do it." Well, there are a few words. By the end of the night, Joe picks up the tab for everybody, and that's that. But the next day, he makes his guarantee. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And he does it on a beach in Fort Lauderdale, not far from where the Jets were practicing at the Yankee Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, where the New York Yankees trained. And I always look at this picture being from New York, and I look, and I know I grew up with these people. Well, I grew up and they were my grandparents at that point. And I could say, "Joe, is that really you? That can't really be you." "Yeah, it's me." "Oh, God. Wait until I tell the girls back in Co-op City. They're never, ever, ever going to believe this." Now, this is a news conference. Can you imagine Tom Brady having a news conference like this on the beach, on the Chase Lounge? People just walking over, that woman behind, she doesn't look like she's too interested. That guy sitting under the palm tree, now he's not too interested either, but these two women, hey, they're gonna, "Hey, look, it's really Joe." "Yeah, it's me. Wait until I take pictures and show the girls." Well, this was in Sports Illustrated, so she didn't have to worry about telling the girls. He told her and him in the blue hat and everybody else, "Hey, we're gonna win the Super Bowl." So Joe makes the guarantee, and that's the turning point. Joe Namath guarantees the Jets will win. He delivers. It is the first time it's called the Super Bowl III, and the Super Bowl takes on the life that you now know every February, except probably this year because of COVID. The Super Bowl becomes the national holiday. Super Bowl III wasn't all that much in terms of glitz and glamour. There was a pregame show featuring a marching band. The Apollo 8 astronauts, Frank Borman, William Anders, and Jim Lovell, circled the moon 2 weeks earlier. They lead the crowd in the Pledge of Allegiance. The National Anthem, which was performed at the first one by Al Hirt, performed by a trumpet player from the Washington Symphony, Lloyd Geisler. And the Florida A&M University Marching Band performed the halftime show. It was it. That was it. That was the whole entertainment. Nobody talked about the commercials. Nobody talked about the parties that they were going to throw because people didn't throw parties. In fact, this game, the Jets left the Super Bowl trophy in the Orange Bowl, and they had to send Tiger Ferraro the next morning to go down to the Orange Bowl after they returned home. And they said, "Where's the trophy?" He had to pick it up. He had to come back to New York, complete with a police escort, so they would have it in time for the Jets at City Hall being honored by the city of New York. Lou Michaels continued to lose, though. He lost the barroom showdown. He lost the game. And then he makes a bet with his brother on the game, Walt. They both decide, well, it's an $8,000 base. Winner gets $13,000, loser gets $8,000. You know, with that extra $5,000, we'll give it to the Padre, Swartzville, Pennsylvania. He needs the money to fix up the church that they went to as kids. Well, Walt welched on the bet, and Lou put up the $5,000, just walked away with $3,000, which caused some problems between the brothers, which were eventually settled. Walt just passed away recently. January 12th, 1969, 52 years ago today. The Jets' victory, arguably the most important win in NFL history, put the American Football League on par with the established league. The NFL suddenly had hot property, the Super Bowl. It would become a national holiday, national obsession in first January and now February. And it is the most watched television event in America of the year. Now, when India and Pakistan play cricket, they get 600 million people watching. You get about 140 million people watching the Super Bowl in the United States. And it was January 5th. That was a key date because Lou Michaels had no idea that a chance barroom showdown with Joe Namath would lay the foundation in turning the Super Bowl into a national obsession. Pat Mahomes from last year's Super Bowl, they'll stay up until this year's Super Bowl is done. The Lombardi Trophy, there's Andy Reid getting the Lombardi Trophy last year. Vince Lombardi died in 1970. He never coached the team in the Super Bowl, and obviously he never won the Lombardi Trophy. The trophy was renamed. It was a Tiffany Trophy after Lombardi died, after the Green Bay and Washington coach. What you might not know about Vince Lombardi, he was a civil rights pioneer in Green Bay, literally desegregated the city. By 1967, the Packers had 13 black athletes on their squad, including the All-Pros, Willie Davis, Willie Wood, Dave Robinson, Herb Adderley, and Bob Jeter. He had gay players on his team. He told his players, lay off of them. I don't want to hear a word or you're going to have to pay. Lombardi was quite the character off the field, badass coach on the field. But Richard Nixon considered him as his vice presidential candidate in 1968. He had that much respect for him. And he found out that Lombardi was a Democrat, so that idea went out the window. If anybody, Marlis mentioned that she had a Super Bowl party years ago. Fun, people being around. I speak on cruise ships, and I spoke on that one, the white one behind the Queen Mary. It's about 5 years ago. It was Princess Cruises, and they own the Queen Mary, which is permanently docked in Long Beach, and it's a hotel. This is where the idea of the Super Bowl party starts, because people hear about this. Super Bowl takes on a new personality, Super Bowl VII. There's a party for anybody who is anybody in Hollywood. And a couple friends of mine in the industry told me, who was there, Dean Martin, parts of the Rat Pack. If you were important, you went to the Queen Mary. Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner, was the host. And it becomes a social event. And people hear about it and say, hey, listen, we may not have the money to go on the Queen Mary and party, but we could do it in our backyard. We could do it in our apartment. And so begins a new era in 1973, the Super Bowl party. And it's party time. I worked with John Madden for 15 years. And I'll kind of do this Madden style because I can do it Madden style. Hey, you got your dogs there. You got your burgers there. You got your wings there. Oh, good. They have the ketchup and mustard. Yeah, that's good. Boom. Yeah. Give me some bread because I love ketchup and mustard sandwiches, which he did. And you got the cake and you got the dip. Yeah. Okay, it's party time. So that's John at a party. John at a party. I can't imagine. By the way, John, his studio in Pleasanton, California, which I've been at. The studio is one size and the kitchen is bigger than the studio because they had initially thought, we'll put the entire Food Network in the studio because they'll need a big kitchen. Kind of figure with Madden, you need a big kitchen. Every community in America is touched by the Super Bowl. Stores have the big screen TV, generally in the non-COVID year. Big screen TVs, supermarkets have super sales. There is such a thing as the Beer Institute. A lobbyist for the Beer Institute, Lori Levy, took me out one day to explain about how big a party day the Super Bowl really was. As she said, second biggest food consumption day of the year behind Thanksgiving. Of course, there's the big old TVs, as Madden would say. There, the big old TVs there. They get sold. According to the National Electronic Dealers Association, sales of large screen TVs increased 500% during Super Bowl week. The event increases the demand for televisions to watch the big game. Beer here, depending on the year. The Beer Institute has data that suggests the Super Bowl is one of the 7 biggest sales days of the year, behind Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, 4th of July. In fact, there's evidence now that the Super Bowl is a much bigger party event than New Year's Eve. The big game in you. Newspapers sell advertising for special Super Bowl sections. They could get away with it because they're journalists. The Super Bowl is a moneymaker for supermarkets, department stores, bars, snack food makers, breweries, restaurants. It's also the springboard for companies to start their annual TV, radio, print advertising campaigns. I don't know how many of you watched the game for the commercials, but I found out how big a deal it was in the mid-1980s, the commercial. Now, you can't go with this for 2021 because we don't know how many people are going to be in there. The NFL is talking about putting first responders in the stadium in Tampa for February 7th. We don't even know if there's going to be a game on February 7th or the 14th or 21st. COVID. And you know what? It's not going to be a Denver Broncos situation. The game must go on if you don't have your 3 quarterbacks. It's not going to happen. So the game, there are contingency plans to play it maybe the 8th, maybe the 14th, maybe the 21st, if COVID becomes a problem. So last year, the average ticket price, $5,706. Also for the past 5 Super Bowls, that's been stagnant. $5.6 million, the average cost for a 30-second commercial during Super Bowl 54. Up 107% since 2008. I had to throw this in because I work with John Madden. 1.4 billion chicken wings will be eaten during the Super Bowl weekend. 11.2 million pounds of chips. 8 million pounds of guacamole. 10 million pounds of ribs. Now, according to Wallet Hub, in 2020, 1 in 2 people would sacrifice their vacation days for 1 year to watch their team win the Super Bowl. More than 1 in 3 would give up their annual bonus. An estimated last year, 22.7 million. That will go up this year because there are more states that are out there betting as opposed to last February. 22.7 million. That's Americans likely to bet on the Super Bowl, legally wagering $325 million. And again, that's going to be broken this year because more states are in on legalized gambling. Hey, there's Joe again. Joe sold pantyhose. Remember he sold pantyhose? Haynes pantyhose. And some women, when I give this talk, have yelled at me, say, oh, Joe's cute, but can you show us the legs? There are the legs. Takes care of some women who have asked about that. Oh yeah, this is Joe today. He's selling Medicare. That was over at a certain date, and he's come back with a second commercial on Medicare. So there's Joe trying to sell you Medicare. Amazing. He went out, he made a movie with Raquel Welch once. He did a commercial, Noxema commercial with Farrah Fawcett. The Super Bowl commercial. Now, about the actual game. Most people have no idea who even played in the game 7 weeks afterwards. In 2004, I went up to Ithaca College to do a talk to sports business management students and ask them who was in the 2004 Super Bowl, the Janet Jackson game. Most of them couldn't tell me, and they were majoring in this. I'm saving that for later because I'm going to ask you the same question. The actual game begins, it takes a second place as a news event. The NFL is not necessarily looking for football fans or even trying to convert people to become football fans. They just want them in front of the TV that day for a big audience, and rating the commercials has become a pastime For some people who will not watch the game, don't understand anything about football, but understand the commercials. Major part of what is an entertainment package. Down the road here, this stadium is about 3 miles from me, is no longer in existence. It was knocked down a couple of years ago as it was falling down. But back in 1979, there's Mean Joe Green of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the kid offering the Coca-Cola. This still, 41, 42 years later, is the standard of commercials. It's the gold standard of Super Bowl commercials. 1984, Apple, one of their first commercials, a sledgehammer to a computer. Pepsi, 1966, Coke guy takes a Pepsi. 1998, Tabasco, Mosquito. 1998 also, Doritos, 3D Doritos. 2003, Budweiser, the Clydesdales. 2003, Reebok, Terry Tate, office linebacker. And finally, and she's still around, Betty White. And I think Abe Vigoda was in that commercial as well, the Snickers commercial from 11 years ago. The Arizona problem, well, St. Louis Cardinals moved to, Bill Bidwell took his St. Louis Cardinals and moved them to Tempe, Arizona in 1988. And a problem immediately starts out because Bill Bidwell, who wasn't exactly the best of owners while he was in St. Louis. They had all kinds of problems in terms of attendance. And he moves to Tempe, and the attendance problems continue in Arizona, even though it's a brand new territory. Only one other team out there, pros, the NBA Suns, and there is the Arizona State college program, the football program. But Bidwell did not make an impact there. Spring training, I forgot about spring training being out there too at that point. But anyway, the 1993 Super Bowl, that is going to Tempe to boost sagging attendance. You want a Super Bowl, a chance at Super Bowl ticket, you got to buy tickets to Cardinals games. In 1986, Ronald Reagan made Martin Luther King Day a national holiday, but states could sign on or sign off on it. Arizona signed on it, but a new governor came in 1987 and he canceled the Martin Luther King holiday. John McCain backed him up. McCain's reasoning was we have too many federal holidays, and McCain said that it was the worst decision he ever made politically. Bidwell takes the team to Tempe in 1988. MLK and the big game. Well, Stevie Wonder announced that he would not perform in Arizona unless the MLK Day was restored. And convention planners bypassed the state. The battle is on, and the NFL is now involved in a battle that they don't want to be in, but are in. In 1989, the state legislature overrode Meekum and passed legislation to create a state holiday, which would have taken care of everything, honoring King. But opponents managed to get enough signatures on a ballot and to get it in front of voters in the state to decide whether or not to honor King in November 1990. And the NFL said this to the voters of Arizona: you want the 1993 Super Bowl? Make it a holiday. If you vote against it, the Super Bowl goes. Well, they voted against it, and the NFL pulled Super Bowl 22, Super Bowl 22 from Tempe and put it in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. 2 years later, the question comes up again. That's the presidential year, Bush and Clinton and Ross Perot. So they're going to get more voters out in 1992 than 1990. And the NFL says, listen, you want a second shot at the Super Bowl? We'll give it to you. All you have to do is say yes to the holiday. And we guarantee you, if you say yes to the holiday, we'll give you the game at our next owners meeting, which was in March of that year. And the voters said yes, and the NFL kept its promise and gave the 1996 Super Bowl to Tempe, Arizona. Here is the question from 1990. 1, live or Memorex? Did Whitney Houston perform this live, or did she perform it on tape? Well, as Paul Harvey said, gave his story, and then he ended, now you know the rest of the story, and I'm going to give you the rest of the story. Jim Steig is an old pal of mine, known him forever. And he told me the story. He worked for the NFL in events. He basically put together Super Bowls. So he's talking about, let's go back to January 1991. Gulf War is on. The United States goes into Iraq after Iraq invades Kuwait. So it is a very special game in terms of protecting the game security-wise. And the NFL really wants to do something really, really good. So Stig is telling me the story. In early January, our coordinator of Super Bowl pregame activities, Bob Best, produced a recording of the Florida Orchestra for National Anthem producer Ricky Weiner. A week later, Weiner flew out to Los Angeles, and he gets Whitney in the studio. And Whitney says, okay, let's go record the track. Amazingly, it was done in one take. This is the anthem performance, the gold standard now of anthem performances. Whitney Houston, 1991 Super Bowl, but it wasn't live. It was on tape. 2004. Anybody remember who actually played in this game? 2004. It was in Houston.
Oh, yeah.
And there is Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson. Anybody remember who played in that game? Bonus points if you know the score. I'll give you the score. Score was 32-29. Anybody remember who played in the game? But they remember Janet Jackson 17 years later. New England beat Carolina 32-29, but nobody remembers that unless you're a diehard Patriots fan. Or love Tom Brady and follow Tom Brady. He's still playing. It was 17 years ago. It's amazing. He's in the playoffs. Anyway, this game changes a whole bunch of things. CBS does the game. CBS was owned by Viacom, and they also owned MTV. They split. They've come back together as one family just recently. Janet Jackson's costume malfunction at halftime of the 2004 game causes a political football and changes how TV and radio present programming. Believe it or not, on Easter Sunday, ABC TV, ABC showing of Saving Private Ryan is impacted by the 2004 Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl incident, Michael Powell, Colin Powell's son, and the Republican FCC, and I'm just saying that because George Bush was president, and whoever is president, whatever party is in power, runs the FCC. So it was Michael Powell who was appointed by George W. Bush. Anyway, the FCC digs in, starts going after other areas, and by October of 2004, Michael Powell and his FCC colleagues started thinking whether or not a hockey game that features fights with suitable programming for children between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. daily. I see you're getting an East Coast or an ECHL team in Iowa in 2021-22 next year. I guess next year or 2 years from now that you're getting a minor league team there. Anyway, the FCC acts. Now, what happened? Justin Timberlake grabbed Janet Jackson in the dance routine and accidentally forced her dress open, and it revealed one of her breasts. It was only 9/16 of a second. That left the impression. Only 9/16. Well, what happened was simple. It was the days of AOL and their instant messaging, and Yahoo messaging, and Hotmail, MSN, whatever it was called back in those days. Now it's Outlook. And they had a messenger. And people who had TiVo decided, so let me see what happened, because she goes like that real fast. And they look at TiVo and they slow it down and they slow it down and they slow it down. Ah, there it is. The 9/16 of a second, the frame, 2 frames. And they start typing to others. Hey, did you see what happened? No. Go to TiVo. You got TiVo? Go look. And all of a sudden, there's this buzz on the internet. Janet Jackson, hey, you could see one of her breasts. Well, Didn't take long. Politicians were complaining that night, and they were on the steps of Capitol Hill the next day within 15 hours. They derided CBS and MTV, which produced the halftime show, and they pointed the finger at Jackson and CBS and MTV for promoting something immoral. The hammer came down on CBS. The Republican FCC majority voted 3-2. In fine Viacom CBS $550,000 and changed indecency rules. It would take 7 years, but CBS and Viacom would get the money, would never pay the fine. They just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and they would win their court case. Meanwhile, Saving Private Ryan. I don't know how many of you watch Saving Private Ryan, but it's on Easter Sunday on ABC. And it's a Steven Spielberg film. And it's a big Academy Award winner. And Tom Hanks is in it, and Edward Burns and Matt Damon, Tom Sizemore. Saving Private Ryan. There are stations, particularly in the South, that get scared off by the FCC imposing new fines because Saving Private Ryan has some foul language in there, and it may not be edited out. So the FCC raises the fine that stations and networks could be docked for questionable images. There are questionable images in here. They're trying to recreate a war and dirty words. So television stations are scared off by the prospect of fines. 66 ABC TV affiliates, mostly in the South, did not show the movie Saving Private Ryan because of foul language concerns. The TV stations didn't want to risk a fine. Saving Private Ryan had won 5 Academy Awards after the release in 1998. It previously aired on ABC twice, 2001, 2002. Military veterans groups were furious with the stations. Disney ABC offered to pay the fines of the 66 stations if the FCC decided to dock them. Back in 2002, there was one complaint about the movie. No complaints in 2001. The FCC ignored a foul language complaint in 2002. So we go to Safer Acts at halftime. Paul McCartney spent 9 days in jail in Japan for pot. Busted a number of times for pot. He was considered a safe act in 2005. The Stones. There's Mick. Mick is still out there. Just had some heart surgery. And Keith, I hope after I depart, I leave the earth better for Keith because Keith is still going to be around. And Ronnie Wood, who just had a kid not too long ago. They were considered a safe act. The Rolling Stones. The Who, 2 of the founding members of The Who. John Entwistle, who died of cocaine, and Keith Moon, who died of a drug reaction for taking prescription drugs, dead. But there's Pete and there's Roger and Ringo Starr's son, Zach, in the background there. And they're considered a safe act. More than just a game. Entertainment is a big part of this because you're getting people from outside of the football sphere to watch. Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Justin Timberlake, twice he came back for the Minnesota game a few years ago. Remember he was up in Minnesota? Halftime show, he came back. Beyonce, Janet Jackson, McCartney, the Stones, The Who, Whitney Houston, Lady Gaga have performed during the event's pre-game and halftime ceremonies. New Orleans is not going to host the game in 2024 because even the NFL knows you can't go against Mardi Gras. Las Vegas will probably get that. New Orleans will be dropped back to 2025 because, look, the NFL, those 31 owners and the Green Bay Packers board of directors, plus Roger Goodell and all the others in the front office over there. And Goodell lives about a mile from my house, by the way. I don't see him in the streets anymore. I see him once in a while. Anyway, the NFL knows that you can't go against Mardi Gras. You just can't do it. So they're going to move that game to 2025. Anyway, the game this year is in Tampa. Next year, Inglewood, California, home of the Rams and the Chargers. Glendale, Arizona gets the game in 2023. It'll probably be Las Vegas in 2024, New Orleans in 2025. The Orange Bowl, where Namath made his name, and my wife stood under the goalpost one day. in 1982, because you could walk into any stadium you want back in the 1980s, is gone. The NFL is now not putting the game out for bid. They're just calling around to see what community shows interest. If that community shows interest, they will try to cut a deal with them, and they don't put it out for bid because they don't want people to feel bad about losing the bid. Television's a big deal here. Most people who watch in fact, 99.8% of people who watch Super Bowl watch it on TV. February is one of the 3 major rating periods for TV networks, and the network that gets the Super Bowl wins the rating sweep. And what that means is that local affiliates for that network, whether it be CBS, Fox, or NBC, any one of them, the local affiliates get to charge more for advertising in 3 months following up, which would be April, May, and in June. There's another rating sweep in May, and there's one in February, May, and November, and a minor one in July. The NFL likes to claim that they're going to globalize, and they're thinking, hey, London would be a great spot for a Super Bowl. But since the Super Bowl was created by an act of Congress, kind of doubt that London is ever going to see the Super Bowl. The NFL has embraced Las Vegas after years of being against legalized gambling. And of course, they are a contender for a Super Bowl, probably in 2024. The Houston game, 2017, a little about the economics of the Super Bowl. It's a loss leader. There are general claims that the Super Bowl economic impact is $300 million a game. I'm not going to go into the economic theories of this, but it may be 1/10 of that. Maybe 1/10. And I'll explain a couple of reasons why in a minute. 2017, Channel 13 News in Houston raised the question, how much are we paying for the week-long NFL party? Well, the answer was $26 million for Harris County and Texas taxpayers. The Super Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. This is now coming up on 6 years ago, Glendale, Arizona. In 2014, the mayor of Glendale, Arizona, Jerry Weiner, said Glendale would lose money on the event. He told ESPN, the magazine, I totally believe we will lose money on this. Wires claimed that Glendale lost $1 million on the 2008 game, but the Arizona Cardinals owner, Michael Bidwell, said, hey, you got $13 million of free advertising. That $13 million has to mean something. Wow, but free advertising doesn't replace lights and traffic lights that break, or doesn't pay the garbage man to pick up the trash. But they got the $13 million of free advertising. Glendale's numbers backed up Wires, who is not the mayor. He still is the mayor now, but he wasn't the mayor in 2008. Glendale spent $3 million on city services for the game and got back slightly $1 million in taxes from various spending at places including hotels, motels, restaurants, car rental agencies. Another loss, Indianapolis. I've been in that square, actually, but it wasn't lit up when I was there back in 2001 and in 2002. They lost money hosting the Super Bowl, but the city got free publicity. The fans do come with money. They may not come with the shirt, but they come with money. Some Super Bowl goers do spend money at hotels and motels and car rental agencies, but if those places are not owned locally, and we're going to get into just a little bit about the economic impact. If they're not owned locally, the Super Bowl, those places raise their rates, the hotels, motels, car agencies. But if they're a chain, it doesn't stay in the city. It goes back to the home office. So it doesn't stay there. Whatever the locals take, they take. But most of the rate hikes goes back to the home office, wherever the home office is for the car rental agencies and the hotels. It's the same with restaurants too, if they're a part of a chain. If they're local, then they could up the prices. Oh yeah, there are some people, taxi drivers, people who clean hotel, motel rooms, parking lot attendants, waiters, waitresses, who might get more tip money, but a good chunk of Super Bowl spending does not go to non-hospitality businesses. A store I'm just going to pull one out, Neiman Marcus, for one. Nobody went to last year's Super Bowl in South Florida and said, you know what, I need to take a trip to Neiman Marcus. It just doesn't happen. State officials estimated Minneapolis, Minnesota, lost about $9 million in taxes in the 2018 Super Bowl because of breaks given to the NFL. Local communities lost about $2 million. Atlanta 2019. Let's take a look at some of the numbers here. Hotel rooms for 8 nights for each participating team, including 150 standard rooms, 2 presidential suites, and 5 other suites. The NFL didn't pay for it. Somebody paid for it, but it wasn't the NFL. It was the host committee. Oh, the NFL Municipal Stadium in Atlanta. They need money coming into Atlanta to pay down the debt. The NFL Super Bowl, rent-free. They use it rent-free. The assignment of 10 security officers to each team hotel during the day, 10 at night. Also, police escorts for the team owner, to and from the game. Team owners, they get, and it's all the owners, not just the owners of the 2 teams playing. All 31 owners and whoever is representing the Green Bay Packers, they get police escorts to and from the game. Peachtree Place, Peachtree Street in Atlanta. Approximately 10,000 parking spots for game use. Hey, the NFL gets it. They retain all the parking revenue. Nothing goes to Atlanta. A wide range of lesser items, such as installing up to 2,000 banners on street poles, setting up a social media monitoring and response center. Atlanta, there are more things to do than just go to a football game. You can go to the Martin Luther King Museum. I've done that twice. There's my wife walking with the protesters on the freedom marches and all the other marches that are highlighted at the Martin Luther King Center. Or you go to Coca-Cola, or you go to CNN, or to the Oakland Cemetery. There are a number of places that you could go to in terms of the tourism in Atlanta. The NFL will retain all revenue for ticket sales from the game. Even the host committee will have to buy its tickets, up to 750 of them at face value. Atlanta 2019, $10 million is the estimated value to the NFL of sales tax exemption on Super Bowl tickets passed by the Georgia legislature that year, in 2018. Atlanta's bid committee agreed to the NFL requirement that the host committee reimburse the league and its teams for any other state or local taxes they pay in connection with the Super Bowl. Hey, you know what? I bought that thing over there. Well, it's kind of pricey, but I bought it down in the underground. Oh yeah, by the way, here's the bill. Reimburse me. Enhancements included $2 million contribution for use towards certain NFL expenses related to the game. Possible $1 million contribution if there's bad weather and we got to put everything indoors. Hey, a party for somebody like me, 2,000 media members. Hey, the city, $375,000. But think of the free publicity you're going to get. The bylines, Atlanta. And a pledge to provide NFL owners with VIP private airport accommodations. Last year, the Super Bowl was in Miami. Miami-Dade County taxpayers gave the Dolphins owner, Stephen Ross, $4 million for snagging the 2020 Super Bowl. There was a $10 million cost for game expenses, including police protection, that's local police protection, and other services. Oh, yeah, the NFL, hey, they're going to help out. They're a bunch of nice guys. Just ask them. NFL upgrading 2 public parks. That would cost $3 million, but somebody else is paying the bulk of that because the NFL is giving $850,000 to the parks. That is the Super Bowl. That is Marcus Allen, a Super Bowl MVP winner back in the early 80s. And man, I have my game face on there. Look at that. I have my game face. So does Marcus, as a matter of fact. Super Bowl schedule will be played February 7th, 2021 in Tampa. The NFL at this point has no reason to postpone any of the games over the next 2 weekends because of COVID. Can't say the same about the Super Bowl, but we will see. The Super Bowl is big business. It's a political force. It's also a fun time. It's party time. if you are a football fan or not, it is party time. I want to thank Marlis for inviting me. I want to thank everybody who watched the show, so to speak. And I hope you enjoyed it. And any questions or comments or complaints, I'm here.
Wow, I was very intrigued by all of the history that you incorporated into this presentation, along with the information about the Super Bowl. You know, it was a great reflection back on the last 55 years. And I have a question. I haven't seen any posted from those that are watching, but I have a question.
Sure.
The Super Bowl rings.
Yeah.
When did they start?
Oh, the first time out, first year.
Really?
Yeah. Except it's called the World Championship ring.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, they've been.
So who pays for them? Because I understand
the league, actually, the league. The league pays for that, and they pay for the Tiffany Trophy. And the trophies are kept by the teams. So, you know, if you go to the New York Jets offices, you will see this old Tiffany Trophy. They had it in the case with, they had the trophy there, and they had the case with all of the newspaper clippings from the next day from across the country, which talked about the Jets won. What people didn't realize in the aftermath of the Jets' victory was how the game changed. I do another talk on football, a cousin to this one, and I talk about the game actually, and how people, and I just say people didn't realize. See, I gave you the Lou Michaels story. I didn't give you the football thing. Now people didn't realize the game wasn't sold out. The Jets game wasn't sold out. It may not have been, although they claim it was, because you could still get tickets at 4 o'clock for the game. And how in that 3 hours, you know, it's just a football game, but it wasn't a football game. It actually changed American culture because, you know, there were no February parties or January parties. That is every year. That's a February party. And, you know, I worked with Howard Cosell. I didn't work with him. I was always around him when he was out in Simon. One day Cosell says to me, and I'm still friendly with his grandsons, Justin and Colin, and I know their mother, obviously. And he says to me one day, "Do you know why Joe Willie Namath is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?" And I said, "Howard, he won one game. One game. But it changed American culture, which is why he's in the Hall of Fame." If you think of it, American culture was changed. Football was increasing in popularity, but I don't think anybody in 1969 could foresee what the Super Bowl would become, an American holiday, which it is. It's not an official holiday, but I think the NFL next year is going to push that into the President's Day weekend. It's possible. And then you'll get the Monday off afterwards.
Right.
A lot of people
recovery
don't to work. So they're looking to push it back a little bit. And they got to work out with TV a little bit, because you got the Academy Awards generally in February, which is part of the sweeps. And you got the Grammys, which is part of the sweeps. And the Academy Award in the television industry, the Academy Awards are called the Women's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, you know, so they got to be careful. And the NFL does, I'll give them credit. They know their limits. They know that there is no way they could compete with Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It's just not going to happen.
No,
so
of course not.
Why bother?
No, of course not. And you mentioned something about in the early games, what the take-home winnings are for each team. What are they now today?
I think they're about 250,000, 100,000, and not that much. I mean, not that. I mean, to us they're much, but in comparison, they're not all that much. They're sizable for a guy making 700,000 a year, because if you look at the life of the average football player, it's about 2 years. That's about it, 2.2 years. So you win the Super Bowl and you're a fringe player. That's a good chunk of money, an awful good chunk. I mean, for Tom Brady, it's not. For Pat Mahomes, it's not going to be. It is it's a sizable chunk of money for guys who are hanging on, who are, what, 53 players per team. So, you're talking about guys 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53 on the team. And some of them are interchangeable with, as they call them, the guys on the street. So they need the money. I mean, Tom Brady plays for championships. Those guys play for the money because it may not be there a year or two down the road because the careers are so short.
Okay.
And that is Marcus Allen of the Raiders back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, this has been very interesting, very educational and entertaining. And I want to thank you, Evan, for this presentation this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
For those that attended and or will be watching in the forthcoming weeks as we have recorded it. We're going to all remember these historic moments as we cheer for our teams, hopefully on February 7th, with Super Bowl 55 that are going to be playing at Tampa Bay, Florida. Thank you very much, Evan, for this evening.
Thank you, Marlis, for inviting me. Hopefully we do this again at some point. And thank everybody who has shown up tonight and who will see this somewhere in the future. Thank you.